Chapter 29, back in Innisfree. Told you and Jack's Matrix. Toll shouted into the conch shell, "Who's next?" Solo jumped up. "Must be my turn," he said. Toll grinned. "Must be," he said, slapping his brother on the back. "Ready?" shouted Solo. "Yes!" shouted everyone. Solo started. Chapter 29, back in Innisfree. Nell couldn't stop thinking about Toll. How she hoped he was all right. When Toll didn't turn up for dinner for a second night, and after Nell had thrown a tantrum, she and Bill contacted the police, thinking that Toll might have become mixed up with the thieves and their thugs. The following morning, when Toll still couldn't be found, Solo decided to check out Toll's latest project down in the deep. He couldn't understand why Toll wasn't answering any of his magic messages, so a visit to the deep was the only thing to do. Solo assumed that Toll could be foraging about down there. He wasn't sure, though, and he was also worried that the tunnel kids hadn't contacted him. Solo was still feeling the afterglow of his training with Godot, so he couldn't get too worried. His hope for the future was still very strong. He whispered to his mother, "Could I use our private tunnel?" Nell nodded. "Be careful," she whispered. Solo smiled. "Always." When he ventured into his family's private tunnel, the first thing he saw was a little silver book lying face down in the dust. Solo sent a magic message to his parents immediately. In a moment they joined him with Tilly. "What's this?" squealed Tilly. "Shh," said Nell. "We think it's soundproof. But the thieves must never know of it." Tilly nodded, looking solemn. It's your early springtime gift," said Bill. "Best ever," said Tilly. If only I need to stop there for a sec. "Best ever," said Tilly. "But can you hide some treats in here as well for the springtime party?" Nell groaned. "Of course," said Bill, "but not a ton of them." Tilly grinned and hugged her dad. "If only I'd explained how crazy the training can be," said Nell. "We have mentioned it in the past," said Bill. Solo nodded. "He'd realise. I know he would. Anyway, he'd have a mentor, surely." "But who?" asked Nell. Solo showed his parents the little book. "Ah," said Nell. "Best not to look at this." She placed it carefully inside her pocket. Taking care not to look at the cover. "Why?" asked Tilly. "It's a long story," said Nell. "Too long," said Bill with a sigh. "Oh, come on," said Solo. Nell looked uneasy. "We think Toll's in there," said Nell. "Inside the book?" asked Solo. "It seems so," said Bill. "But how?" asked Tilly. "We think that Halo's been selected as Toll's guide," Nell began. "Halo?" asked Solo with a look of horror. "And Jax is missing too," said Bill. And Jax is missing too, said Bill, as Max and Xavier think they're together. "Training together?" asked Solo. "Looks like it," said Nell. "Who's her guide?" asked Solo. "We think Halo as well," said Bill. "He was pretty ordinary when we met him in the reserve," said Solo. "He bit me on the nose." "Oh, it's not really the reserve, is it? It's the Botanical Gardens." He was pretty ordinary when we met him in the gardens," said Solo. "He bit me on the nose." "He's a bit mad," said Bill. "He has some quite strange methods," said Nell. "Off the wall, if you ask me," said Bill. Same, said Nell, but he did train Asmax and Xavier, and they turned out well. I know, said Bill, but Halo takes so many risks. Always calculated, though, said Nell. Calculated to push one right to the edge of safety, said Bill. Said Nell, and right off the edge sometimes. Solo looked worried. But they'll be safe. Nell smiled. Of course, she said. And if you really want to live on the wild side, you could ask to have Halo as your instructor instead of Godot. Solo looked surprised. No way, he said. I love Godot. He remembered Godot's message again. He remembered Godot's message. Meet again to train, train to again meet. It still didn't make any sense.